After Naruto and Tsunami woke up from their nap, they started making dinner. It was a quiet affair as Kakashi, Zabuza, Haku, Maizu, Guzu and Hisame with their ninja training and Tazuna with years of being a father and grandfather could tell something happened between Naruto and Tsunami, and if their smiles during dinner meant anything, it was good. Night settled and Naruto asked the five to come into Tsunami's room as he needed to talk to them while he ordered the brothers to guard the house just in case. When they came in, Tsunami was sitting on the edge of the bed, and after the door closed, Naruto placed up a privacy seal. Kakashi raised an eyebrow at the secrecy and raised the other one when he saw Naruto sit next to Tsunami, and he took her hand in his own. Naruto looked at Tsunami and with a smile and nod from her he started. As I'm sure you've all noticed, Tsunami and I have been spending a lot of time together. Well, over that time we slowly started to fall for each other to where we both knew we loved each other. After the battle on the bridge, we took our relationship to the next level and we made love. Haku and Hisame blushed at that and had a bit of drool from certain images of themselves and a certain lucky blonde. Tsunami blushed as she looked at her father's somewhat surprised face, then at Kakashi's perverted face that was dealt with quickly by Tazuna. As you might have noticed, during the week Tsunami has been feeling ill, and after I put the symptoms together I ran a diagnostic test over her to confirm my suspicion. Naruto paused and with a wide smile from both of them he continued, we found out that we're going to have a baby. Tazuna and Kakashi stood still for a second before both shouted, "What?" While Haku and surprisingly Hisame squealed. Zabuza chuckled and congratulated the expecting parents as well as the scene of the girls as they ran over to Tsunami and kept asking her questions that made her face redder and redder. Naruto coughed to get their attention and all noticed the serious expression on his face. Tazuna, tell me, who do you think I am? Since the first time you heard my name to when you saw me use some of my techniques to when the demon brothers called me Heika. Tazuna looked startled for a couple seconds but regained his composure. When I first heard your name I thought I was hearing things. When the brothers called you Heika, I started to reconsider. But when you disappeared with that lava technique I was even more positive of who you were, as I had seen that before a long time ago. He took a breath to calm his nerves and looked Naruto straight in the eyes. I don't know how, but I believe you are truly an Uzumaki. The rulers of the former Whirlpool Kingdom where I, my late wife and our daughter lived before it was destroyed, and I believe you already know this. Kakashi was wide-eyed at this. The odds of meeting someone from Whirlpool outside of the kingdom were astronomical. Naruto smiled a small smile. You are correct. My mother was from the royal family and she was able to escape that fateful night and fled to Konoha. There she grew up and met my father. Together they became famous during the Third Great Shinobi World War as Konoha's Yellow Flash and Konoha's Red Death. My father then later on became the Yondaime Hokage. My parents were Namikaze Minato, the world's greatest shinobi, and Namikaze Uzumaki Kushina, the princess of the former king and queen of Whirlpool. Tazuna processed the information before he blinked and asked, what do you mean former? Naruto sighed and said, tell me Tazuna, have you heard of the Biju? Tazuna nodded and said, I have. They are supposed to be the 9 strongest demons in existence, from the Ikibi no Shukaku to the Kyuubi no Kitsune. Naruto nodded at that. Tsunami knew what was coming next, and with a kiss on the cheek and tightening her hold on his hand he gave a grateful smile and spoke, that is correct. What many people don't know or don't mention is that many, if not all, of the Biju have been sealed away into either objects or into humans known as Jinchuriki for whatever reason. About 15.5 years ago Kyuubi was used to attack Konoha. She too was sealed, but because she was the strongest, no object or adult would be able to contain her power. The only being would be a newborn baby. This is because its chakra coils, which are in every living thing and allow ninja to use our techniques, would be able to adapt over time to Kyuubi's power. My father knew this as well, and after my mother agreed they induced the pregnancy and I was born. However, only half of the answer was there, as they still needed a seal strong enough to contain Kyuubi's power. With one last goodbye my father headed to Kyuubi with me in his arms and summoned Shinigami to contain Kyuubi's soul and power within me that would cost him his life. He was able to do this, but unfortunately right after the sealing he found out that my mother had died from complications from birth, and realizing I would be alone his final wish was for me to be seen as a hero. Unfortunately only a small handful agreed to this. For the first 5 years of my life it was hell. I won't go into what happened, but on my 5th birthday I met the Kyuubi and she told me why she attacked. I also met my parents with help from Shinigami. For the next year I trained in the Namikaze estate in secret with Kyuubi's help. Then on my 6th birthday I left Konoha to continue training. One of my destinations during my travels was Whirlpool Kingdom. After finding out the condition of the country I headed to the capital, where I told the people to gather everyone in the kingdom to the capital after they saw me open the gates to the royal house. When they arrived I told them who I was and that I planned on restoring the kingdom. That was 5 years ago and construction has already begun, and once I reveal myself to the world in a few months the restorations shall commence quicker. Tazuna was in awe at what he heard. To think his homeland was already being reconstructed when he thought it was lost forever was mind-blowing. How do you plan on the reconstruction to quicken once the world knows who you are? Whirlpool Kingdom was destroyed by Iwa and Kumo before. What makes you think it won't happen again? Naruto smirked as he anticipated that question. During my travels I encountered many powerful people, including the 5 daimyos of the 5 great shinobi countries as well as the daimyos of other lands. Each one has agreed to help me when I reveal my heritage. Also, the Raikage that was in charge during the war is dead and has been replaced with one that happens to be an older brother of another Jinchuriki. The only problem is the Tsuchikage, as the same one is still in charge and he hates Konoha with a passion. Tazuna was once again surprised, as well as Hisame, and Kakashi had a look of pride on his face. Naruto took a breath as he spoke again, catching their attention. This all leads to my primary reason for calling you up here, Tazuna. You are indeed a master builder. Here he chuckles at Tazuna's proud look while Tsunami giggles, and I ask for your help in the restoration of my kingdom. With you in charge I know things will move quicker and more efficient than they are. Plus, with you being the Gifu, father-in-law, of a king, and Gigi of Tsunami and I first child as well as Inari, you get certain special privileges. Kakashi decided to add his 2 cents. Plus, with all the other of his wives around you'll have plenty to look at. He giggles perversely. Zabazaz starts to giggle as well when he realizes his daughter would be one of those women and quickly smacks Kakashi on the head. Tazuna nods his head at that, then stops dead on his tracks and sputters, "Wives?" Naruto and surprisingly to Tazuna's shock Tsunami nod at that. That is correct. Because I am the last of both my clans I am able to marry multiple women. I told Tsunami this at the beginning of our relationship and she agreed to share me after we spent time together. There are already other women I love in Konoha and other parts of the world who know this as well. In fact, Haku-chan happens to be one of these women. Tazuna just shakes his head at this while Kakashi started giggling uncontrollably when he remembered all the lovely women in Naruto's life and he'd be able to see them. Naruto got up and knocked Kakashi on the head. "Oni-san, please control yourself. It's bad enough with Sandame Gigi." Tazuna raised an eyebrow at that. "You two are related." "Not by blood, but he was one of my father's students when he was a sensei and he became a son to both of my parents. In fact, after my birth they were going to make him an honorary member of the clan as a surprise, but that didn't quite work out," Naruto stated. Kakashi bolted up at that and with one visible wide eye he said, "Really?" Naruto looked at him strangely and said, "Yeah. Didn't I already tell you this?" Kakashi deadpanned at that and responded, "No." Naruto chuckled nervously and scratched the back of his neck and said, Surprise." Kakashi, Zabuza and Tazuna face faulted at that while Tsunami and the other girls laughed. "Well, we'll take care of that when we return to Konoha. So Tazuna, have you thought on my request?" Naruto asked. Tazuna looked at his daughter then back to Naruto. "What will happen with my family?" "I'll take them with me back to Konoha as that is the safest place while Su-chan is pregnant. Also, if Inari agrees to what I have to offer him it'll be the best place as well." Tazuna asked what he meant and he told them what he told Tsunami. Tazuna was surprised at this and Kakashi remembered Minato offering him the same thing, but he turned it down saying that he wished to regain his family honor back. Tazuna took a couple minutes to think it over before he accepted. Naruto smiled and thanked him and said he'd take him, Inari and Tsunami back to Whirlpool. When Tazuna mentioned it'd be a long trip since they were civilians, Naruto just chuckled with a gleam in his eyes. After chatting for a few more minutes and congratulating the expecting parents, everyone went back to bed with Tsunami and Haku in Naruto's arms talking when to break the news to Inari. The next morning after breakfast, Tsunami and Naruto took Inari aside away from prying Uchiha ears and told him what they told the others, only an edited version for children. He cried and hugged Naruto and called him Otu-san over and over. Naruto smiled and hugged him back as Tsunami hugged him as well. He agreed wholeheartedly for the procedure. Luckily Naruto knew the procedure so he could perform it before they went to Whirlpool. Once gathering the supplies he needed and informing the others they'd be gone for a couple hours, they left after Naruto grabbed Haku as well. With Inari in Haku's arms and Tsunami in Naruto's, they traveled a couple miles to a safe distance and made sure they weren't followed or being watched. Naruto had Tsunami and Haku turn around so Inari wouldn't be as embarrassed as he had to strip butt naked so Naruto could draw the seals on his body. When he was done he got up and said, "This shouldn't hurt, but you'll probably feel strange during the procedure." With that said, Naruto went through over 100 hand seals and called out Namikaze Haijutsu, Chishio no Iju, Namikaze's secret technique, transfer of blood. He watched as what looked like some type of seal left from his body and connected to Inari's that activated the seals on his body that formed a dome around the body blocking him from view. This went on for 5 minutes until it finally stopped. When the dome went down, Naruto and the girls who had turned back around looked at the new Inari. He grew about 3 inches and his hair now had blonde streaks in it. His face looked a bit like Naruto as well. He was still out so they couldn't see his eyes. Naruto took out a blanket and wrapped it around Inari. He picked him up and looked at Tsunami and gave her a reassuring look. He'll probably need some new clothes. For now he'll probably still fit his old clothes if a bit tightly, but when we get to Whirlpool we'll let him see if there are any clothes in the royal house that he likes. No point of letting them not be of use. The same goes for you too. Tsunami and Haku nodded at him as they watched him place Inari on a futon as he pulled out 2 more to make one big one. They got the idea as they saw him lay down and they joined him as well. Narukoi, I was wondering how you plan to get us to Whirlpool, as I'm assuming by that look in your eye we won't be traveling at a civilian's pace, Tsunami questioned. Naruto chuckled as he replied, "That koi is a secret and no asking Haku-chan because I'm sure she figured it out." Would I be correct in that assumption, Haku-koi? Haku blushed under his playful glare but then grinned, "Only if I become your next mate, Koishi." Naruto blinked and blinked again before replying, "Are you sure, Haku? I don't want you to feel pressured into that." Haku nodded and replied, "Hi, I'm sure. I love you, Naru-kun, and I want you to be my first and only." Naruto smiled at her and gave her a kiss on the lips. They were broken from their kiss by a cough. Looking to his other side, Naruto and Haku looked at a blushing Tsunami. "Sorry about that, Su-chan," Naruto said. No, it's not that. I was just thinking that technically you'd be her first twice," Tsunami replied, with Haku looking confused and Naruto as well until he realized what she meant. "Ah yes, I forgot about that. You see, Haku-chan, after I marked Tsunami we found out her hymen came back. I think it has to do with the demonic part of the bloodline, as humans and demons view sex differently. Demons only mate with one other person of the opposite sex, so both are virgins when they find their mate. Hyuhyme was my first and I was her first as well," Naruto said, thinking back to that night. And what a night it was in the following morning. "Which reminds me, Naru-kun, you haven't visited me in a while," a certain red-haired vixen thought back, making Naruto blush, then sad as he realized she was right. "I'm sorry, Hyuhyme. Things have just been so hectic. I promise that I'll visit tonight. I love you," he thought back. "I love you too, Naru-kun," Kyubi thought back. When he focused attention on the two in front of him again, they were looking at him. He sighed and explained, "I'm sorry. I was talking to Kyubi. I have been neglecting her since we've arrived in Wave, and I promised her I'd visit her tonight when we go to bed." Tsunami and Haku made an "oh" face at that, and Tsunami felt a little bad about taking so much attention from Naruto's first love. Naruto noticed this and put a stop to it. "Tsunami," he said, getting her attention, "don't feel bad. Our time here was limited, and I think that's why Kyubi has been as patient as she has, as she realized that I had the rest of my life with her, so she let us spend as much time together as we could, and now you've become another woman that I love and a mother of 2 of my children." She smiled at that and had a few tears as she realized how easily he accepted Inari as his own even before the change. She kissed him and they broke apart. Then he turned back to Haku. "I promise you that you'll become my next mate. Would it be alright if we wait till we arrive in Whirlpool, then we can have some privacy? Haku nodded at that, and all three were startled when they heard a groan. They looked over to see Inari starting to wake. Naruto walked over to Inari and kneeled on one side of him while Tsunami kneeled on the other side with Haku behind his head. When Inari finally opened his eyes, they were no longer the dark black eyes like his mother and grandfather, but a darker shade of the blue eyes like his new father. Naruto grinned down at him while Tsunami and Haku smiled at him. "So Sochi, how you feeling?" Naruto asked. Inari blinked a few times before looking towards his Otu-san. He grinned a familiar grin and replied, "I feel awesome, Otu-san. I actually feel a little bit stronger." Naruto smiled at him and ruffled his hair. "That's good to hear. Now how about you give your Okawa-san and Oba-san aunt a hug?" Inari looked around him and spotted his Okawa-san and his new Oba-san. "If I understood what they told me, Otu-san gets to marry more girls, which means I got more presents," he cackled in his mind. After giving his Okawa-san and Haku Oba-san a hug, he got redressed in his clothes that were tight but not too tight so they could wait as planned. Tsunami and Haku talked as they watched Naruto let Inari get used to his new body. He found walking a bit difficult as his steps were longer than usual and he stumbled a few times. Then Naruto had Inari do a few exercises to stretch his body. Since Inari wanted to be a shinobi as well, Naruto decided to begin his training as he'd be a few months behind in the academy. Getting the standards changed is definitely on my to-do list, he thought. It was about noon when they headed back to the house. Kakashi was reading his book while he had Sakura and Sasuke running up and down the trees to increase their chakra reserves and to maintain their control. Sai was on the roof and appeared to be drawing. "I still need to talk to him," Naruto reminded himself. Zabuza was teaching Hisame and the demon brothers some more suidan jutsus since Naruto had silently requested it. He caught the Uchiha activating his Sharingan trying to copy the jutsus, but he already placed the seals that negated that annoying ability on all of his people including Kakashi, and after convincing Hisame that Haku didn't have the skills to do it, she let him. It wasn't easy, as even though she could tell he was concentrating on drawing the seals, she'd catch a slight tinge on his cheeks which would make her blush even more. As for Tazuna, well, he was on the porch drinking some leftover kiri sake and reading a familiar orange book. Naruto snapped his head over in Kakashi's direction and yup, there it was. He sighed and ignored it. "Doesn't mean Su-chan will though," he thought, cackling evilly. After watching his mate smack her father over the head for reading that in front of Inari, even though Inari had been with them the entire time and trying to hold in his laughter but failing as he watched Kakashi cry at watching one of his books seem to magically catch on fire from Tsunami's glare at it, the others finally noticed him and the others. Of course Inari's change had most of them surprised, and when asked what happened he replied, "It's a secret," that had Sasuke and Sakura looking at Naruto, who replied, "What?" he said. Sasuke could feel the power coming off of Inari. Even though he was still stronger, Inari's chakra reserves had increased drastically. Remember, Namakazes are born with large chakra reserves, and Sasuke didn't like that one bit cause he knew Naruto had something to do with it. The fact that Inari's reserves were larger than his own at that age had nothing to do with it. Nope, not one bit. Bullshit. Before he could start his rant, Haku had tossed a Senbon, paralyzing him. Surprisingly, Sakura didn't yell at Haku about hurting her, Sasuke-kun. It could have been because she was too tired or was starting to see Sasuke as the gay emo avenger we all know him to be, but only time will tell. Naruto looked at her and smiled and said, "Working hard, Sakura-san?" She nodded and he replied, "That's good. If you want to survive in this world you need to be strong. Do you know what you want to do in your kunoichi career?" She shook her head and said, "No. I've never really gave it any thought before." She paused and took a quick glance at Sasuke before looking back at Naruto. "I don't know what I'd be good at. Back in the academy the teachers said I'd be good in genjutsu, but during our test Kakashi-sensei gave us I fainted when he used a D-rank genjutsu on me." Naruto sighed and surprised everyone when he sat in front of her. "Look Sakura, I'm not going to lie. You and a majority of the girls from the academy are pathetic. You spent your entire time chasing the Uchiha when you should have been training. Being smart is a good thing, but as you've seen, it's not everything. You are not only the weakest female from the graduating class but the weakest of them all. Yamanaka Ino is slightly better than you because of her clan training. Hinata is actually the best female in the group, the only problem is her confidence. What I'm truly disappointed about though is I heard you and Ino used to be best friends but you broke apart when you both decided to chase Sasuke. Friendship like that is rare in this world. It's okay to have a crush on somebody but to throw that away for someone who never says good things to you is stupid. As for your future, if you decide to become a true kunoichi, perhaps you could study med jutsu and become a medical nin. You have the brains and the chakra control for it. All you need to do is make sure your heart is in it and train and train some more. The hospital is always willing to have more healers. But if you're only in this for Sasuke, then quit as soon as we get back to Konoha. If you remain the way you are and continue to be a kunoichi, you will get yourself killed, your comrades killed or worse. I'm sure you remember what Gato had planned for you and the rest of the girls. At that, Sakura paled. Naruto got up and dusted himself off. He turned around and headed toward the house with Inari, Tsunami and Haku in tow. He left one last comment as he called from over his shoulder, use this time to consider what you want to do with your life. Not what your parents want, not what Kakashi wants, not what Ino or anyone else wants. You must decide what you want. As Kakashi watched Naruto head in with the others, he sighed as he lifted the Uchiha and took a quick glance at his female student and hoped she took to heart what Naruto said and headed in as well. Kakashi announced that they'd be leaving first thing in the morning back to Konoha. They all nodded at that and Naruto leaned over and whispered something in Tsunami's ear. She nodded, and when she and Inari were done eating, headed upstairs to get ready to pack. Tazuna soon joined them. Night came, and as promised, Naruto visited Kyuubi when he was asleep, and from a certain tent he must have been enjoying himself. He finally was able to get that talk with Sai as well. Flashback. Naruto had found Sai on top of the roof again as he was drawing. He took a seat next to him. There was silence for a few minutes before Naruto spoke up. Did you mean what you said when you introduced yourself to the others on top of the Hokage monument? Sai stopped drawing and looked at him. Yes. Naruto nodded at that and said, even your dislike of those that threaten Konoha. Sai once again responded with a, yes. Even if that threat was Danzo. Naruto responded. Sai froze at that and looked at Naruto. I know who you are, Sai, and who you work for. I know you're supposed to be one of his mindless soldiers without emotions. I know that he has you monitoring the Uchiha, and should he prove a threat to Konoha, or more specifically, to his Konoha, that you are to eliminate him. I also know what happened to your brother Shin. That he died from a sudden disease. What you don't know is that it was Danzo who injected him with the disease. He saw how close you two were, and Shin was becoming a problem for him. If you want to see the proof, meet me on top of the fort's head of the Hokage monument in 2 weeks. I'll be there at noon till 1 every day for a week. You can tell Danzo this if you like, but remember that Danzo's root is starting to rot and I'll be coming soon to eradicate it. Flashback end. When the next day came, Naruto and the others arrived at the finished bridge. The villagers thanked them, especially Naruto, and decided to call the bridge, the Great Naruto Bridge, which had Sasuke brooding. Sasuke and Sakura were wondering why Tazuna and his family were traveling with them while Sai was contemplating Naruto's offer. When they stopped at a Tofukage, Naruto informed Team 7 that he would be returning no more than a week later as he had personal things to do. He also wrote a letter for the Hokage and gave it to Kakashi to hand it to him when they reported in to let him know of Sasuke's actions during the mission, that he would be arriving at most a week later than Team 7 for personal reasons, and that he had a surprise for him when he returned. After Kakashi promised not to reveal the surprise, they separated. After traveling for a few minutes, Naruto led them to an open field. He turned around to face the others with a smirk on his face. Alright, before we go any farther, I need to ask you all a question. No matter how ridiculous it sounds, I need you to answer it. Alright. Getting a nod from them all, he continued. Alright, the question is this. If you could fly on a dragon or a phoenix, which one would you pick? After everyone thought it over, Zabuza, Tazuna, Inari and Guzu picked dragon, while Hisame, Tsunami, Haku and Maizu picked phoenix. Smirking at their answers, he rolls up his sleeves where they see a tattoo of a dragon and tortoise on his left arm and a phoenix on his right. Biting his thumbs and running blood over the dragon and phoenix tattoos, he then slams his hands on the ground, yelling out Kuchio's no jutsu. There were multiple poofs of smoke that followed. Those that knew what happened were anxious to see what would appear. When the smoke cleared, everyone was awed at what they saw, except Naruto and Kyuubi, of course, who chuckled at their faces. For right in front of them were 4 dragons and 4 phoenixes, each one at least 3 times the size of Zabuza. Everyone, I'd like you to meet some of the summons of the legendary dragon and phoenix contracts. Summons, I'd like you to meet my mate Tsunami, our son Inari, Tsunami's father Tazuna, my soon-to-be mate Haku, her father, and one of my knights Zabuza, our friend Hisame, and the brothers Guzu and Maizu, Naruto stated while pointing toward each person. Each of the summons nodded at said person. All right, now that the introductions are over, everyone mount up. In the case of Tazuna and Inari, I'll create a cage bunshin to ride with each of you so you don't fall off. After everyone climbed on top of their summon, he helped Tsunami on theirs and held her around the waist. He noticed Haku and Hisame looking at them and created cage bunshins for them as well. Haku happily accepted while Hisame was blushing up a storm at the close contact, but she got comfortable fast leaning against him. Remember to use your chakra to stick to your summon. We should arrive in a little over 2 hours. Now onwards to Whirlpool, Naruto shouted. A chorus of, "Hi Naruto-sama," rang from the summons and they were off. As they were flying, he looked around him. He could see the excitement from Inari as his clone had to restrain him from leaning over too much. Haku and Hisame had snuggled up to their clone while looking around, while Zabuza, the brothers, and surprisingly Tazuna had each of their summons racing with each other. He was glad they were high enough so no one would notice all the noise those 4 were making. He tightened his hold on Tsunami and rested his head on top of hers. "I love you," he whispered. Tsunami smiled and snuggled further into his chest. "I love you too," she whispered back. As expected, they arrived at the borders of Whirlpool Kingdom in a little over 2 hours. Naruto was glad that the villages he saw weren't as bad as they were when he first saw them, but they still had a ways to go to where they were before the fall of the kingdom. When they reached the capital, Naruto had them circle around a few times so Tazuna could see what had been done and needed to be done. When they made their descent, the people below finally saw them. There were some who had looks of fear, as it wasn't every day you see a group of dragons and phoenixes. But most of all, each person was astonished at what they were seeing. When Naruto and his group landed, it was next to the royal house. He thanked his summons and with their job done left back to their world. When the people got over their shock and saw who had arrived, they cheered and started chanting, "Naruto-sama," over and over. Smiling, Naruto rose up his hand to quiet the people. "My people, it has been too long since I've returned. Unfortunately, I will only be here for a few days, but I have brought some very important people to me for you all to meet, as they will be important in Whirlpool's future. First off, we have Guzu and Maizu. They will help protect Whirlpool from any enemies that wish us harm. Next we have Zabuza. He is one of 7 people who I have special plans for. These 7 will be known as my Knights of Whirlpool and will become my top generals right under the royal family. To my left is the lovely Hisame. She has become a good friend of mine recently and should she wish may stay here in Whirlpool. Next to her is Haku. She is one of the loves of my life and shall become one of my queens to help restore my family. The old man to the far right is Tazuna. He used to live here in Whirlpool and he has agreed to help me restore our kingdom. He shall be the one in charge of all construction around the kingdom. I have full faith in his abilities. Finally, the beautiful woman to my right is Tsunami, the daughter of Tazuna and my first wife and queen. She is also the mother of my eldest child Inari, who was right in front of me and is also now carrying our next child. Tsunami smiled as she leaned against Naruto's shoulder as she placed a hand on her stomach as he wrapped his arm around her waist. The people were shocked at what they heard until they cheered again. One of them asked the question that was on the minds that knew how children came to be. "Anyo Naruto-sama, how is it possible for this boy to be your son? He looks to be no more than half your age." The others nodded their heads at that. Naruto smiled and replied, "That is because of a technique that I used on him from my father's clan. It is a secret technique that literally overwrites the DNA of the one it's being used on to the one that's using it. For Inari's case, since I used it, it changed his original birth father's DNA to mine. So now he is both my and Tsunami's son. If a female were to have used it, then he would be the son of the female using it and his original birth father." The crowd was stunned at what they heard. It was hard to believe something like that existed. If you wish to see proof, we can have him unseal the lock to the royal house. I was planning on doing that anyway, Naruto stated, getting nods from them. As they made their way toward the house, the crowd got bigger and bigger as word spread fast that the king had arrived, and with at least one queen already and another one soon to be. Plus the fact that he had an 8-year-old son and another child on the way made the capital the liveliest it's been in decades. Once they arrived, they watched as Naruto instructed Inari what to do. As Inari cut his finger with a kunai Naruto gave him, he watched amazed as the cut healed right away. Quickly getting back to the situation, he swiped the blood across the seal. Just like when Naruto first did it, the people were shocked as the gates unsealed themselves. They quickly got over it and started shouting, "Kuteshi Inari, Crown Prince Inari." Inari blushed at all the attention, making Naruto chuckle. After applying everyone's blood that hadn't already to the seal, he dismissed the crowd and told them he'd check in for reports tomorrow at noon. Naruto created a few hundred cage bunshin to clean the outside and the inside. They quickly found some clothes for Inari, as did Tsunami and Haku, and giving the okay to Hisame as well, she found some things as well. Meanwhile, while the girls and Inari were looking for clothes, Naruto, Zabuza and Tazuna were in a meeting room. So what do you think, Tazuna? How long would you guess until reconstruction finished for the entire kingdom? Tazuna looked over a map of the kingdom that Naruto had and remembered everything he saw as they arrived. Well, at the current rate, at least 10 years. But if you get the help you're expecting when you announce your heritage, then probably within 3 to 5 years. Naruto nodded at that and was pleased with the answer. You will also be building forts around the kingdom. There will be 7 main bases in key locations and several outposts as well. Right now our biggest threat is Iwa, and if they ally themselves with Oto, then that will make things much more difficult. Tazuna and Zabuza nodded at that as they spent the next couple hours marking several locations for the bases and outposts. They'd head out later to check each location to make sure it was suitable. During the next few days, Naruto and the group helped out where they could. Naruto, Zabuza and Tazuna traveled across the kingdom on summons to determine where to place the forts and outposts as well as the resources they had available. Inari was quite popular with the little girls, and Haku and Tsunami were a little nervous of having the Sama added to their name, but were slowly getting used to it. Also, like promised, Naruto had marked Haku as his next mate. They found out that her Hyoten techniques were at least twice as strong and she was able to pull water from the air more easily. As Naruto had said during the introductions, he offered Hisame sanctuary in Whirlpool, but she said she'd still like to go with him to Konoha. He asked her why, and she finally relented that she had taken a liking to him. He had admitted the same to her, and with the okay from Tsunami and Haku, they went on their first date that ended with their first kiss. Flashback. Naruto and Hisame had gone out for dinner. They were each dressed in regal-looking clothes that caught the eyes of many passer-byers. They had a great time over dinner, and when they were done, headed back to the house. After walking her to her room, Naruto leaned in and captured her lips. Hisame quickly responded to the kiss, and after a few minutes they broke apart with her head on his chest. Naruto looked down and lifted her chin up to give another but shorter kiss. "Good night, Hisame-chan. I had a great time tonight. I hope we can do it again." Hisame smiled and nodded. After pecking him on the lips, she replied, "Hi, I had a wonderful time too." "Good night, Naruto-kun." With one last kiss, she walked in her room and closed the door. Naruto stayed still for a few seconds with a smile on his face before he headed to the master bedroom, where he found Haku and Tsunami waiting up for him. Flashback end. Naruto had told Haku, Zabuza and the brothers that they'd be going back to Kiri so Zabuza could continue training his apprentice and to make sure each one of the new Kiri no Shinobigatana Nananin Shu were at least low Junin level before the Chunin exams. Before they knew it, 7 days had passed and it was time to leave. After everyone said goodbye to the crowd and Tsunami and Inari hugged Tazuna, Naruto summoned the dragons and phoenixes. With a hug and kiss to Haku, he created a cage bunshin that rode with her and watched as they flew off toward Kiri. Turning back to the now smaller group, he created a cage bunshin for Tsunami and Inari as he decided he'd ride with Hisame. With one last glance toward his kingdom, he and the others left for Konoha. After a couple hours, Naruto had them land about a mile from Konoha. After bidding the summons their thanks, Naruto turned to the small group. "Alright, Konoha is just under a mile from here. We should reach it within an hour." Tsunami, Hisame and Inari nodded at that and they continued on. In Konoha at the North Gate were the eternal Chunin Higane Katetsu and Kamizuki Izumo, who were on guard duty once again. Katetsu sighed and looked at Izumo. "Why are we always stuck doing the boring jobs?" Izumo sighed back and looked at Katetsu. "For the millionth time, there is no greater honor than getting a mission guarding the leaf and the villagers, Katetsu." Katetsu snorted at that. "But guard duty is so boring. Nothing ever happens." Izumo was about to reprimand his best friend again until he spotted 4 figures approaching. "Shape up, Katetsu. Time to go to work." Katetsu blinked a few times before following his friend's line of sight and spotted the figures as well. 3 looked to be adults while the last looked to be a child. Of the 3 they could definitely tell 2 were females. When they got closer they saw the woman standing to the man's left wore a royal blue kimono with designs of whirlpools around it. She appeared to be in her late 20s and had long dark blue hair that framed her face. The woman to the man's right wore black ninja sandals, a dark blue skirt with shorts underneath and light blue shirt that stopped a couple inches above her belly button and a vest over that. She appeared to be in her early 20s and had short brown hair and black eyes. They also noticed she had kunoichi training by the way she was moving. The now identified as a young boy in front of the man had black hair with blonde streaks in it and dark blue eyes. He wore simple civilian clothes. In fact, he looked sort of like the only adult male of the group. Katetsu and Izumo immediately recognized the man with the blonde hair and blue eyes along with the faded whisker marks. They both smiled and waved at him. Naruto smiled back and led his group over to the little stand. "I see you 2 got the short end of the straw, again." Katetsu grinned and looked at Izumo. "See, I told you, Izumo, even Naruto agrees with me." Izumo just shook his head and looked at Naruto. "So checking in, I presume. I heard from Kakashi that you'd be coming back a bit later." Naruto nodded his head as he took the sign-out sheet and signed in. "Yeah, had some personal things I needed to do. Anyways, let me introduce you all. The brown-haired woman is Hisame, the blue-haired woman is Tsunami, and the boy is her son Inari," Naruto said, pointing towards said person, "and these 2 are Katetsu and Izumo. They're good guys and you can usually find them on guard duty at one of the entrances." After pleasantries, Naruto, with the aid of a Kaminari Shunshin no Jutsu, lightning body flicker technique, took his group and arrived right next to the Hokage Tower. After nodding at the 2 Chunin guards at the front door, Naruto and his family walked in the tower. Inari and Tsunami were awed by all the activity and taking in the sights of all the different shinobi and kunoichi, while Hisame was a bit better. They saw many of them give nods of respect to Naruto as he passed by. Finally reaching the Hokage's office, Naruto knocked on it, getting a "come in" response from the other side. Smiling to the others, he opened the door. Hiruzen was going through some recent mission reports as some clones were off to the side doing the rest of the paperwork when he heard a knock at his door. With a quick "come in," he heard the door open, and the first to walk in was a young boy who looked the same age as Konohamaru, followed by 2 beautiful women, then a familiar grinning face. "Naruto-kun, I see you're back, my boy," Hiruzen said with a smile. Looking at the others, he was about to pick up his pipe when the blue-haired woman glared at him. Gulping, he moved his hand away from it, getting a smile from the woman. Coughing, he looked at Naruto again. "And who would these 3 be?" "I read your letter and Kakashi mentioned a surprise." Grinning wider, he wrapped an arm around both women with Inari in front of him. "The woman on my left would be Tsunami, daughter of Tazuna and my first mate. The woman to my right would be Hisame, a now former nin of AIM, and if things continue like they are, one of my future mates. The boy in front of me is Inari, Tsunami's son, and through a jutsu that changed his DNA, now my son as well." Hiruzen sat there stunned before Naruto's grin turned into a bright smile. "And last but not least, Tsunami is pregnant with our next child." That final bit of info had him swallow some spit that went down the wrong hole, making him cough. Getting up, he walked over to them with a smile on his face and said, "Welcome to Konoha." After pleasantries, arranging for Hisame to become a kunoichi of Konoha, handing the proper paperwork for Inari to register at the Ninja Academy, and making Naruto promise for him and any others available to come over for dinner soon as Hiruzen's wife Bawako had missed him, Naruto and the group left the Hokage to his work. Seeing as it was around noon, Naruto led them to Ichiraku Ramen for something to eat. Stepping into the ramen stand, Naruto noticed it was quite full. What surprised him the most though were the forms of Team 7- Sasuke and Sai, 8, 9 and 10 along with their sensei. After whispering to Tsunami, Hisame and Inari to keep quiet about their personal relationship, they walked in. "Yo Ayame-chan, Tsukiji-san, I'm back," came a voice that made everyone turn their heads. Kurenai and Ayame smiled at Naruto and noticed the three newcomers. Seeing the look in his eye, they knew he'd explain later. Sakura, seeing the three, however, chose to speak her thoughts. "Tsunami-san. Inari-san. Hisame-san. What are you three doing here?" Since Inari wishes to become a shinobi, he and Tsunami have decided to live here in Konoha, while Hisame has decided to become a kunoichi of Konoha, responded Naruto in a casual tone. Scrunching her face in thought that Naruto had to admit was cute, Sakura let it go as it sounded reasonable. Sitting down at an open table, Naruto and the others ordered some food while making some small talk with everybody, with Naruto enjoying making Sakura, Ino, Hinata and Tenten blush. "So Sakura, have you thought over that conversation we had in Wave?" questioned Naruto, catching the attention of the others. Sakura looked down for a second before she looked at him with a small smile. "Hi. I wish to get stronger to prove I'm not some pathetic fangirl. I want to make a difference in the world. I've decided I want to become a world-renowned med nin like Tsunade-sama." Naruto smiled at that. "What have you done so far to begin this goal of yours?" Sakura looked at Ino, who smiled at her. "Well, the first thing I did when we got back was apologize to Ino for how I've acted these past years and if she was still willing to be my friend. After realizing I was being truthful, she apologized to me as well. I've asked Kakashi-sensei for some advice and he's been helping me every day since we've been back." Naruto nodded at that, glad to hear of the girl's progress and that Kakashi was finally getting semi-serious, at least in training his team. After an hour of eating and chatting, they started leaving one by one. Kurenai let her hand run across the bare skin of the back of Naruto's neck as she walked by, sending a pleasurable sensation run through him. She turned her head with a smirk on her face and lust in her eyes that told him what she had planned for later. Giving her a nod and smile, she turned back to her team to finish whatever they had for the day. After a quick kiss and a "see you at home" to Ayame, Naruto bid Tsuki goodbye and left with Tsunami, Hisame and Inari in tow. Dinner was quite lively, with everyone meeting the new members. Enko, Kurenai, Yugao, Ayame and Tsubaki were currently the only ones able to live in the Namikaze estate at the moment. Hana wanted to move in, but since she was still the Inuzuka clan heir, she had to stay at the Inuzuka compound until she passed it on to either Kiba or another Inuzuka. Naruto sat at one end of the table and smiled, watching his family interacting and getting along. He looked to his right, spotting Inari sitting quietly watching everyone talk. "It's different, isn't it?" Inari looked at his Otusan and nodded. Naruto smiled and ruffled his hair. "Remember, tomorrow we enroll you into the Ninja Academy. I have a couple things in the morning to do first, so we'll head over there during lunch hours." Getting a nod and smile from his Sochi, Naruto went back to his dinner. Nighttime arrived and everybody was settling in for the night. Kurenai had told the others that Naruto was going to mark her tonight, so they had to go at least one more night without him or settle with a clone. To no surprise, they each chose the clone to cuddle with during the night. Warning Lemon. Naruto locked the door behind him and turned on the privacy seal that was placed in each bedroom. He looked at Kurenai to see her blushing. "Is this your first time, Kurenai?" She nodded at him. He smiled at her as he approached her, taking in her dressed form. She was dressed in her normal work attire, consisting of a white dress with a single red sleeve on her right arm with bandages covering her hands up to her elbows, and had bandages wrapped around both of her upper thighs. To finish it off, she was in standard ninja sandals showing off her feet. He placed his right hand on her cheek as he leaned in to kiss her. Kurenai closed her eyes, enjoying the blissful sensations that ran through her whenever she kissed Naruto. She felt him removing her dress during the kiss and realized he had slowly been pushing her back when she felt the bed hit the back of her legs. She lowered herself down onto it and stared up at him with half-lidded eyes. Naruto took off his clothes till he was only in his boxers, then took off her sandals, rubbing her feet and sucking on her toes, making her moan. Finally he crawled up her form, her only dressed in red sexy panties and a bra that barely contained her chest. He leaned down again, engaging in a passionate kiss as his hands started massaging her bra-covered chest. Kurenai was in pure bliss. While she was a virgin, she still used her fingers to masturbate, and her body had never felt on fire so much. Quickly rolling them over so she was straddling his waist, she smirked down at him. My turn. Removing her bra, she let her D-cup breasts free, grabbing Naruto's hands to replace them on her breasts. She moaned as he pinched her left nipple while sucking on the right. After a few minutes of this, she stopped him and leaned down, letting her body rub against his as she slid down. Reaching her destination, she spotted the tent in his boxers. Taking a pause, she looked back into his eyes, seeing love and lust in them. She returned to her goal and rubbed the bulge with her palm, making him groan. Smiling at that, she slowly pulled his boxers down, with him lifting his hips to help. When she was done, she marveled at the sight. He was much bigger than the average male at 8 inches long and 2 inches thick. And he still has a few years to grow, she thought to herself. Slowly she wrapped a hand around it, feeling it twitch in her hand. She looked back up at him to see his eyes closed, giving her his complete trust. She moved her hand down and up the shaft and occasionally all the way up to cover the head. The fire in her loins grew with each groan that came out of his mouth, groans that she caused. She spotted a bit of pre-cum on the tip, and remembering how Tsunami and Haku had said how delicious it tasted, decided to try it herself. Sticking her tongue out, she licked his tip, getting the loudest groan yet. She let it rest on her tongue for a few seconds, letting her taste buds get the full extent of it. Finding it more than enough to her liking, she lowered her head, wanting to taste more. Naruto was letting Kurenai take her time. When she touched his dick with her hands, he was surprised at how soft they were. When she licked his tip, he felt his spine tingle. When she wrapped her lips around his head, he let out a guttural moan. While Kurenai wasn't the first woman to give him a blowjob, each one felt different. With Kurenai, she added a bit more suction than the others. Kurenai sped up her ministrations. She wanted to taste more of this life-giving seed that had given Tsunami a child. She used one hand to massage his balls while she used her other hand to stroke the part of his shaft her mouth didn't cover at the moment. This was her first time doing anything like this, but by Naruto's sounds he seemed to greatly enjoy it. About 5 minutes later, he was able to warn her, "Shitkur-chan, I'm about to cum." Speeding up, she felt the first spurt hit her throat and pulled back till she was only sucking on his head and stroking his dick. A few spurts later and she concluded he was done. Swallowing what was in her mouth, she licked her lips to get any remains, then licked his dick of any remains. Naruto took a breath to catch himself. That was probably one of his most intense orgasms ever. Reaching down, he pulled her up, smashing his lips to hers. She moaned into the kiss as his tongue aggressively explored her mouth. She suddenly found herself once again on her back, with Naruto kissing his way down. He sucked at her neck and shoulder where he planned on marking her, then played with her breasts. Kurenai grabbed the sheets she was laying on as he sucked and massaged her tits. He continued on licking and nipping at her toned stomach, sticking his tongue in her belly button, making her give off a moan, giggle type of sound. He kissed her panty-covered pussy and continued his way down her legs, making her toes curl. Finally, what seemed like eternity to her, he made his way back to her last piece of clothing. Feeling him stick his fingers in, she lifted her hips as he pulled them down and tossed them somewhere in the room. Naruto admired viewing her naked form for the first time. She truly looked like a goddess. He nuzzled the small patch of black hair above her wet folds, making her giggle, then give a silent scream as he stuck 2 fingers in her. Back and forth he went, listening to her moans and watching her twisting body. After a couple minutes, he spotted her clit and bent down, capturing it between his lips, sucking and nibbling on it. A couple minutes of all this was all Kurenai could take, as she was unable to even verbalize a warning and exploded over his face. Continuing to pleasure her as she rode her orgasm, he finally stopped and licked what he could of her juices before using his fingers, then wiping them clean. Kurenai watched all this with hazy eyes, only to get turned on more when he let out, "Delicious," after sucking on his fingers. Crawling up her form, he kissed her, making her taste herself along with the aftertaste of his cum in her mouth. Breaking the kiss, she felt him place his head into her pussy, making her moan. "Are you ready, Benny Heim?" Blushing at her new nickname, she wrapped her arms around his neck and her legs around his waist as she smiled at him. "Hi. Make me a woman, Naruto-kun. Make me your maid, my koishi." Smiling at her, he kissed her and with one thrust entered his entire length in her, breaking her barrier, making her cries muffled in the kiss. Wiping the tears from her cheeks, he stayed still for a few minutes while one hand massaged one of her breasts to try to lessen the pain. Feeling her move her pelvis as a sign to continue, he started slow with long thrusts. Soon enough Kurenai wanted more. More Naru-kun. Please, I want to feel more, she moaned out. As you wish, my Heim, he responded with his thrusts quickening. She enough Kurenai was thrashing about as he pounded into her while sucking on her breasts. With one last scream from both of them he erupted into her, filling her womb as she coated his dick. Watching as she tried to catch her breath, she suddenly found herself on her hands and knees with Naruto smacking her ass. This is only the beginning, my Koichi, he growled next to her ear, making her shiver. Before she could respond he rammed his dick into her sensitive pussy, making her scream in pleasure. Lemon over. The next morning Naruto got up early to make breakfast for everybody. Kissing Kurenai on her forehead he put on some clean boxers and a robe and headed downstairs. The first person to come down was Anko. Giving her a kiss she plopped down on a sofa in the living room and turned on the television. The next person down was Tsunami. He wasn't that surprised as she had been getting up early for years to take care of her family. Giving her a kiss as well she joined Anko in the living room. By 8:30 everyone was awake including the now limping Kurenai. He helped her to the table giving her a quick kiss, smiling as he saw his mark on her left shoulder. He guessed it was his instincts to mark them on the left as all three had been marked on that side. After breakfast they left for their duties. He used some of his med jutsu to help ease Kurenai's soreness. He offered to use his light element to completely heal her but she declined, saying it was something she was proud of. Shaking his head as that was pretty much the same thing all three had said, he watched her leave until there was only him, Inari, Tsunami and Hisame. Alright Inari, I'm going to take Hisame here to finalize her becoming a kunoichi of Konoha, then when I come back me and your Okasan can head over to the academy. While I'm gone you should read up on the stuff that I left out for you that have been taught at the academy so far. After getting a nod from the boy Naruto gave a kiss to Tsunami and a hug to Inari. Naruto glanced at the nearest clock, noticing it was almost 10 o'clock, then headed out with Hisame. Looking to her right as they ran from rooftop to rooftop, Hisame spoke up, so what exactly can I expect? Glancing at her Naruto responded, while definitely one of the best at his job, Ibiki is a decent guy. As long as you answer his questions everything will be fine. Arriving in front of an unmarked building they walked in. After finding the man they were looking for, Naruto gave her a reassuring kiss and smacked her ass as he walked by. Blushing at the snickering form of one Morino Ibiki, Hisame just huffed and said, let's get this over with. After leaving her with Ibiki, Naruto's next destination was the Inuzuka compound to visit his Inu no Ju, Dog Queen, and his Inu Heim. After a few minutes he reached the place. He smiled and waved at the other clan members as well as scratch any dog that ran up to him. The Inuzuka compound was definitely one of the liveliest clans. He figured if they were here it wouldn't take long until his scent hit them, and he was right as two female figures, if the squishy objects pressing into him were any indication, crashed into him. They rolled around making quite the scene until Naruto had them both pinned beneath him with a feral grin on his face and ones on theirs. He was unsure who to kiss first until they surprised him by kissing him at the same time, engaging in one of the hottest three-way kisses he could ever imagine. Breaking apart for breath, Naruto raised an eyebrow at their forms, still pinned beneath him. Soon blushed but still had a grin on her face. We figured we save you the trouble of who to kiss first due to our more advanced animal instincts. Besides, here she blushed and looked at Hannah, who blushed as well. We decided when you mark us that you'll get both of us at the same time. That way it'll sat our animal desires and you get to fulfill every straight man's dream, having a threesome with mother and daughter. Here she leaned up and nibbled his ear, making him groan, and whispered in his ear, and if you're lucky maybe even more times in the future. Hearing her daughter whimper, she followed her daughter's line of sight to have her eyes widen at the bulge in his crotch. He's huge, they both thought. Readjusting himself he got up and helped both ladies up as well. After having a more social conversation, Naruto noticed it was 11 o'clock already and decided to see one more person before heading home. Kissing both of his Inu lovers he made his way toward his next destination. Once again he made good time and knocked on the door once he sensed only one person inside. Hearing a coming that belonged to a female voice, the door opened with a shout of Naru-kun. Uchiha Makoto was just finishing tidying up the house when she heard a knock at the door. With a quick Coming from her, she made her way to the door and opened it, revealing someone she had sorely missed. With a shout of, "Naru-kun," she tackled the young man, wrapping her legs around his waist, making him hold her with his hands on her ass as she kissed him. Setting her down, Naruto smiled at her. "I missed you too, Miko-chan." Makoto smiled at her nickname as he spoke it with such love. After taking his hand, she led him in, where he told what he told Sum and Hana about what happened while he was gone. She was shocked that he was already having a second child, but was overjoyed like they were too. They spent most of the time after that with him sitting on the sofa with her straddling him, making out. She hadn't told him yet, but all of this was new to her. She never had the chance to date, as she was arranged to marry Fugaku and he wasn't interested in the opposite sex, something she was pretty sure Sasuke also inherited from his father. She was just glad that he had the decency to invite his guests to stay in one of the unoccupied houses for the night so she wouldn't have to listen. She hadn't even had sex, as she was artificially inseminated both times. She never knew the touch of a man, and Naruto made her feel things she never felt before. Sighing, she rested her head against his chest, letting those thoughts leave her for now. Naruto rested his head atop hers, running his hand through her soft raven hair. He knew this must be the hardest on Makoto. Unlike Sum and Hana, they had a whole clan to keep themselves busy, but Makoto wasn't even able to take missions until Sasuke was able to become clan head. So she was stuck here pretty much all day alone. His heart ached at the thought, wishing he could do something to help her. "Why don't you give her a pet? Something unique," commented Kyuubi. "Yes, that's it. You're a genius, Q-Heim," Naruto responded back. Kyuubi smiled at the mental kiss she received, but was happier that she could make her Naruto feel better. He didn't want to get her a dog or cat, as even though they were great pets, they weren't unique. Thinking, he suddenly came up with what he wanted. He'd go to Sum and Hana first if they knew where any might be. Smiling at the thought, he noticed it was almost noon. Sighing, he kissed the top of her head. "I need to go, Miko-chan. I need to enroll Inari in the academy." Hearing her sigh as well, he lifted her chin and looked in her eyes. "I love you, Uchiha Makoto. You know that, right?" Smiling, she kissed him and nodded. "And I love you too, Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto." Wrapping his arms around her, he continued, "I know things have been tough on you. There's only about 8 months until the world will know of our love as well." Smiling at that, Makoto suddenly frowned as her thoughts from before came up. "Naruto-kun, there's something I need to tell you." Seeing her looking at him, she took a breath and continued, I've never actually had sex before. Fugaku wasn't interested in the opposite sex, and I was artificially inseminated both times, resulting in my son's births." She blushed and continued, "You were actually my first kiss. Fugaku kissed me on my cheek on the day of our wedding. Everything I've done so far with you has been new to me." She looked down as she finished. Naruto blinked at what he heard. All this time she's been alone. He regained his focus and noticed she wasn't looking at him. He lowered his hands, each one resting on a cheek and lifting her face. He smiled at her with all the love he could show and spoke, "I promise you, Makoto, you will never be alone again. I'll make sure your first time will be something you never forget. I want it to be truly special, so it'll take me some time to plan everything, but I promise you I will make you my maid before my 16th birthday." She smiled and nodded at that, tears forming in her eyes. He noticed and leaned forward, her eyes closing, with him placing a gentle kiss on each one. With one last passionate kiss he left, with Makoto feeling more alive than ever. Naruto couldn't wait to see her beautiful smile again when he gave her what he had planned for a pet. Arriving back home a couple minutes past noon, he spotted Inari reading through some books about Konoha's history while Tsunami was just coming down the steps. Smiling as she noticed him, she walked toward him and placed a quick kiss on his lips. "I'm guessing it's time to go?" she questioned. Seeing him nod, she called over Inari, and making sure he had everything, they walked out of the house and placing a hand on a shoulder each, they left with a quick seal less Shunshin no Jutsu. They arrived right outside the academy entrance. Remembering the room number and who was teaching the class Inari would be in from the papers, he went over, he grabbed Tsunami's hand, and they walked in with Inari in front. There were, as expected, many children outside during the lunch hour, ranging from first-year students to last-year students. The family drew a lot of attention, especially from the older boys admiring Tsunami's form and the girls admiring Naruto's. One certain girl that was trying to hide her blush was a 13-year-old Hyuga Hanabi, second daughter of Hyuga Hiyashi. She immediately recognized him from her father's and older sister's descriptions. As a Hyuga, she was more advanced than her peers and was able to feel the power he was holding back. She watched as they entered the building, letting her continue her lunch with a certain blonde running through her thoughts. Reaching the correct door, he knocked on it, getting in, enter, from the other side. Opening the door, they saw Iruka going through papers. Looking up from his papers, Iruka was surprised to see a beautiful woman who was holding hands with a young man he recognized and a boy that could be their son. Konnichiwa, Iruka-san. I am here to enroll my son here in the academy. I have the proper documents here along with a note from the Hokage giving his permission for the late entry, spoke Naruto, handing said papers to a surprised Iruka. Getting over his shock, he went over the papers and saw the Hokage's personal seal allowing this. Shaking his head, he stood up. Welcome to the first-year class of the Ninja Academy Uzumaki Inari. From what Hokage-sama has written, I see you've been catching up with the first few months of class. I'll give you a test at the end of next week to determine where you stand in the class. Getting a nod from the boy, Naruto spoke to him. Why don't you go outside and introduce yourself? I believe Konohamaru is in this class as well. I'm sure you two will become fast friends. Smiling at that, Inari bowed to Iruka and giving a hug to his parents ran outside eager to make friends. Naruto chuckled and turned back to Iruka. I'm sure you're wondering how this came to be correct. It did cross my mind, Iruka answered truthfully. I was sent on the mission with Team 7 to the Land of Waves. There I met Tsunami, this beautiful woman next to me who was the daughter of our client. During our stay we slowly fell for one another until we knew it was love. I invited her and Inari to live with me here in Konoha and they agreed. Tsunami smiled at that and playfully added, plus the fact this lucky bastard knocked me up had a little to do with it. Iruka could have sworn his jaw hit the floor. While he knew once you became a ninja certain privileges were granted, sex being one of the bigger ones, he was still a bit unnerved that this young man had already found a woman to love and was pregnant with his child. Of course he couldn't really complain as he was 16 when he lost his virginity. Something a lot of people didn't believe, thinking he was still a virgin since he never dated. Although that was because he had his eye on a certain ramen girl, but his hopes were crushed when he learnt that she was in love with someone else and the two were seeing each other. In fact, many men and some women were crushed when they learned this. Ayame was one of the most desired civilian females after all. Shaking the depressing thoughts away, he congratulated the expecting parents and promised to take care of their eldest. Walking out, Naruto and Tsunami spotted Inari with the Konohamaru Corps and some others. See y'all later, Inari, shouted Naruto. Bye Otusan, Okasan, responded Inari. Wrapping an arm around her waist, Tsunami leaned her head on his shoulder as they walked out of the academy grounds, once again being watched by a certain pair of eyes.